Catherine de Medici didn't marry into royalty. She fought, schemed, and survived her way into it. An Italian outsider in a court that resented her bloodline. A queen consort turned queen mother. They whispered about her in the candlelight. Witch, poisoner, sorceress. And while men ruled with swords, she ruled with secrets. But here's the twist. Her methods weren't cruelty for cruelty's sake. They were cold, tactical, designed for one thing only: survival. In a world that sought to destroy her, Catherine didn't bend. She studied. She watched. She adapted. She turned herself into a living, breathing embodiment of the art of war.
All of us are self-made, but only the successful will admit it.
Part 1. The Making of a Queen, Raised in Shadows, Forged by Fear. Before she ever wore a crown, Catherine de Medici was trained to survive like a ghost in the halls of power, unseen but always present. Florence, 1519. Catherine was born into the legendary but blood-stained Medici family, a lineage whispered about more for its enemies than its heirs. Just weeks after her birth, her father, the powerful Lorenzo de Medici, died. Her mother followed not long after. Before she even had memories, Catherine had enemies. She was not raised in a palace of love but shuffled like a political pawn from convent to convent, first as a noble curiosity, later as a hostage when the Medici power waned. Her childhood was a crucible of silence, shadows, and strategies. By age 10, she had mastered not just prayer, but pretense. Watching how nuns maneuvered influence through quiet intimidation and coded language. Even as a child, Catherine was learning what power really looked like. It wasn't in thrones or titles. It was in control over perception. When Rome was sacked in 1527, a mob stormed the convent where she was kept. She was dragged out by her captors, hidden in servant clothes, and nearly executed by anti-Medici rebels. That night, huddled in a grain sack to escape notice, she learned a chilling lesson. Visibility was vulnerability. From that day forward, Catherine practiced the art of calculated invisibility, blending in, observing, waiting. Her intellect was sharp, but she cloaked it in obedience. Her ambition was volcanic, but she buried it under humility. And when the Medici clawed back to power and arranged her marriage to Henry, second son of the King of France, Catherine did not resist. She didn't need a love story. She needed a crown. But France was not Italy, and her new court was not welcoming. She was mocked for her lineage, her looks, her barren womb. She was a queen in name, but a stranger in court. Her husband preferred his mistress. The nobles dismissed her. Even the king kept her at a distance. Yet Catherine smiled, curtsied, and took notes. She understood something they didn't. They thought she was powerless because she was quiet. But she wasn't quiet. She was listening. Strategic breakdown. Becoming the unseen strategist. Catherine's earliest years reveal the formation of a dark psychological archetype, the Watcher. She was what modern dark psychology would call a highly adaptive manipulator, one who survives not by force, but by remaining underestimated. Here are the key psychological tactics at play. Invisibility as a weapon. Catherine learned that to survive, she had to be beneath notice, making others feel safe in their dominance. This made her dangerous. Emotional restraint. Her childhood taught her how to suppress reaction. This is the foundation of psychological control, appearing calm while calculating. Empathic manipulation. By studying others from the shadows, she became an expert in reading vulnerabilities, information she would later use with surgical precision. This phase of Catherine's life mirrors a principle straight out of Sun Tzu's Art of War. Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. She wasn't weak. She was becoming dangerous. And when the time came, France would learn that the quiet Italian queen was never just watching. She was planning. Part 2. The powerless queen, betrayed, belittled, and becoming ruthless. They thought Catherine was harmless, but while they laughed and ruled, she studied and remembered. Catherine de Medici was queen in title only. When she arrived in the French court, she found herself trapped in a gilded cage. Her husband, Henry, second son of the king, was cold and distant. His heart and bed belonged to another, Diane de Poitiers, a woman 20 years older than him, yet infinitely more powerful. The court called Diane the real queen. Catherine was a decorative afterthought. But in the Game of Thrones, love is not the currency, influence is. Diane had Henry's affection, but Catherine had something deeper. The patience of someone who had already survived worse. She swallowed her humiliation like poison and smiled through it. She bled invisibly. When Henry ascended to the throne, Diane's power soared. Catherine was excluded from politics, forbidden from participating in state affairs, and even barred from raising her own children. She watched as her enemies took positions of power, whispering about her foreignness, her lack of charm, her ugly Italian sorcery. They didn't know what she was truly capable of. Because while Diane flaunted her role as mistress and paraded through court with jewelry and favors, Catherine was building a network. Spies among the maids, confidants in the kitchens, letters sent and intercepted. She learned what the king feared, what the nobles desired, who could be bought, who could be broken. She played the long game. She knew Henry would not live forever. And when he died, suddenly and gruesomely, in a jousting accident, everything changed. Diane tried to maintain her grip, but now Catherine was not just queen. She was regent, ruling in place of her underage sons. The power had finally shifted, and Catherine did not forget who had mocked her. She exiled Diane from court, took back her children, burned her enemy's influence, and then she did something even darker. She remembered how powerless felt, and she made sure no one would ever make her feel it again. Strategic breakdown, from humiliation to ruthless ascension. This section showcases Catherine's transformation from dismissed ornament to calculating regent, a textbook evolution of the covert manipulator archetype. She embodied these dark psychological tactics, deferred revenge. Rather than react impulsively, she waited until her enemies became vulnerable, a principle tied to Machiavellian delay. She understood the best revenge is taken after you've won. Information is power. Catherine didn't need brute strength. She gathered secrets. She knew everyone's pressure points and desires. This is the core of psychological warfare, leverage through knowledge, weaponized forgiveness. She didn't lash out immediately. She allowed her enemies to believe they'd won. Then, when their guard was down, she struck. This is high-level manipulation, destroying others when they believe they are safe. These tactics mirror another dark principle from Sun Tzu. If your enemy is secure at all points, be prepared for him. If he is in superior strength, evade him. If your opponent is temperamental, irritate him. Pretend to be weak, that he may grow arrogant. Catherine wasn't just a queen. She was a shadow in silk, moving behind the curtains of history, preparing for the moment when the crown was no longer ornamental, but absolute. Part 3. The puppet mistress, ruling through her sons. She didn't wear the crown. She held the strings. After Henry II's death, the French court erupted into a power vacuum. His eldest son, Francis II, was just 15, a sickly boy married to Mary, Queen of Scots, and surrounded by vultures. Noble families like the powerful Guise clan circled like wolves, eager to devour the kingdom in his name. Catherine had waited long enough. Now, she moved. Though she wasn't officially the ruler, she controlled everything, behind closed doors. She whispered in Francis's ear, steered decisions, and played factions against one another. The court was a powder keg, and Catherine held the spark. She appeared motherly and reserved in public, but behind her eyes burned the focus of a woman who refused to be ruled ever again. When Francis died unexpectedly, Catherine's second son, Charles IX, became king at just 10 years old. Now officially regent, Catherine's power became law. She appointed ministers, signed edicts, and silenced opposition. But even then, she remained a ghost, never claiming center stage. She made her sons believe they ruled, while she made every decision that mattered. This subtle manipulation became her signature tactic. Catherine didn't dominate through force. She ruled through psychological dependency. Her sons leaned on her. Her enemies underestimated her. And her critics couldn't prove anything. Because Catherine understood. True power isn't taken. It's accepted by others out of necessity. While France burned with civil strife between Catholics and Huguenots, Catherine masterfully walked the razor's edge. She played both sides, negotiating peace one day, sanctioning assassinations the next. She spoke of tolerance, but trained her inner circle in the language of betrayal. No one knew where she truly stood. That was her brilliance. She was not a monarch. She was the master of ambiguity. Strategic breakdown. The architect of dependency. In this phase of her life, Catherine personified a deeper, more refined form of dark power, control without accountability. Her tactics included proxy power. She used her children as vessels. This is the essence of the puppet master strategy. You pull strings from the shadows, and when things go wrong, your proxies take the fall. Plausible deniability. She never appeared too decisive, always framed her actions as necessary compromises. This gave her an invisible shield, the illusion of neutrality, which disarmed her enemies. Emotional bond as a weapon. By making her sons emotionally dependent, she secured loyalty, not through love, but through engineered need. Dependency is more powerful than affection. This is the living embodiment of another hidden truth from Sun Tzu. All warfare is based on deception. Even the most obvious truth must be questioned when the enemy appears most vulnerable. And Catherine? She appeared vulnerable for decades, a quiet widow, a concerned mother. But in truth, she had become the linchpin of France. Every decision, every conflict, every negotiation passed through her hands. The fate of the nation lay not in its kings, but in the mind of a mother with a memory like a ledger and a heart forged in betrayal. Part 4. The Serpent's Feast. The St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. When the bells rang out, they didn't call the faithful to prayer. They signaled the beginning of a slaughter. Paris, 1572. The city was dressed for celebration. Streets overflowed with banners, flowers, and whispered hopes. Catherine had orchestrated a political marriage, her Catholic daughter Margot to the Protestant leader, Henry of Navarre. On paper, it was peace, a sacred union to bridge the blood-soaked chasm between Catholics and Huguenots. But Catherine knew better. You don't end a civil war with a wedding. You end it with silence. And so, she set the stage, not for peace, but for purging. In the days before the wedding, tensions simmered. Catherine's court buzzed with paranoia. Protestant nobles had flooded Paris, and Catherine feared rebellion, or so she claimed. Then came the attempted assassination of Admiral Coligny, a key Huguenot leader. Many believe Catherine herself ordered it, but it failed. And that failure forced her hand into darkness. On the night of August 23, 1572, Catherine summoned the king, her son, Charles IX. She told him what must be done. The Protestant threat had to be extinguished, all at once, before they struck first. And in that moment, Charles, young, unstable, desperate for his mother's approval, gave the order that would stain French history in blood. Just before dawn, the church bells of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois began to toll. What followed was not war. It was a culling. Catholic mobs and royal guards stormed homes, dragged Huguenots into the streets, and butchered them. Blades flashed in the moonlight. The Seine ran red. Men, women, children. No one was spared. It wasn't just in Paris. The madness spread to the countryside. Thousands died. And Catherine, she watched it unfold from the Louvre, calm, composed, untouched. To some, it was a necessary evil. To others, the coldest betrayal in French history. But to Catherine, it was a message. Don't mistake diplomacy for weakness. Strategic breakdown, calculated chaos, and the doctrine of overkill. This was not spontaneous violence. It was precision-engineered psychological warfare. Catherine's orchestration of the massacre reveals a terrifying mastery of dark psychological principles. Shock and awe. The violence wasn't just murder. It was message. By executing such a sweeping purge so suddenly, she shattered her enemy's sense of safety. Fear became law. Timing is everything. Catherine waited until all the major Protestant leaders were in one place, under the illusion of peace. The timing was no accident. It was surgical. This is the gather then gut tactic used in palace coups and mob takedowns alike. Morality as a mask. Catherine used faith, duty, and order as justifications. But these were just costumes. In truth, the massacre was about removing threats, preemptively and irreversibly. This wasn't just a move on the board. It was Catherine flipping the table and resetting the game. Sun Tzu warned of such maneuvers. When you surround an army, leave an outlet. Do not press a desperate foe too hard. But Catherine did the opposite. She eliminated the outlet. Because she wasn't afraid of desperation. She was the force that created it. Part 5. The Puppeteer's Poison. Controlling kings, breaking bloodlines. A crown doesn't protect you from control. Sometimes it's the chain. After the bloodbath of St. Bartholomew, France was quieter, but never calm. The fires of rebellion still smoldered beneath the surface, and Catherine, ever vigilant, tightened her grip, not through brute force this time, but through subtle domination. She had sons, 3 of them, and none of them were truly kings, because Catherine sat behind the throne, and sometimes inside it. Her eldest, Charles IX, was shattered by the massacre. Haunted by guilt, paranoia, and his own mother's shadow, he slowly lost his mind. He died young, coughing up blood and secrets, leaving the crown to his even weaker brother, Henry III. Henry was theatrical, vain, addicted to courtly pleasures. He wore pearls like armor and danced through political storms like a bored actor. And Catherine, she manipulated his every move. She surrounded him with advisors of her choosing, controlled access to information, and ensured his enemies were hers first. She flattered him, whispered nightmares into his ears, and turned the royal court into her private stage. She ruled without ever needing to rule. And yet, as her sons failed one by one, Catherine began to feel something unfamiliar. Loss of control. The Valois bloodline was thinning. Her legacy, built on blood, calculation, and iron, was slipping through her fingers. And so she turned to a final gambit. Strategic breakdown. Manipulation. Masquerading as motherhood. Catherine's role as Queen Mother wasn't maternal, it was Machiavellian. She embodied the puppeteer archetype, using loyalty, guilt, and dependence as strings. Her tactics reveal several deep psychological plays. Weaponized nurturing. She cloaked control in maternal love. Her sons thought she was protecting them. In reality, she was orchestrating their every thought, every decree. This is a classic dark triad tactic, where affection becomes surveillance, dependency by design. Catherine ensured her sons never built power outside of her. She disrupted alliances, sowed mistrust, and filtered knowledge. The goal wasn't to empower the king, it was to cripple him, just enough to need her. Projection of strength through others. Like a ventriloquist with a dead-eyed puppet, she used her sons to speak, act, and move, but never let them think. This tactic mirrors political figures who use unstable leaders as pawns to avoid direct accountability. Sun Tzu warned, "If the general is weak and without authority, if his orders are not clear and distinct, the result is utter disorganization." But Catherine thrived in disorganization because she engineered it. Her sons were kings only in title. In practice, they were just actors in their mother's dark play. Part 6. The Black Crown. Legacy, written in shadows. She ruled from behind the throne and was buried beneath it. Catherine de Medici died in 1589, her body weary, her dynasty broken. Her final son, Henry III, was assassinated shortly after her death, stabbed by a fanatical monk who believed he was serving God by slaying a corrupt king. With Henry's blood, the Valois line ended. The family she fought to preserve vanished. But Catherine's influence, that never died. She left no golden statues, no sweeping memoirs, no romanticized myths. What she left behind was far more dangerous. A blueprint, a method for how to rule without ruling, how to dominate without conquest, how to leave your fingerprints on history without ever signing your name. Her enemies called her a witch. Her allies feared her more than they loved her. And France learned that some queens do not raise armies. They raise fears, rumors, and generations of obedience. Historians debate her morality. Was she a monster? A strategist? A desperate mother? A patriot? But those who study power understand. Catherine wasn't interested in being remembered. She was interested in never being removed. She wrote her legacy in the subconscious of a nation. Through marriages, through whispers, through bodies no one ever claimed. Even her death was symbolic. She died before she could see her life's work collapse, before her lineage was extinguished, before the world turned the page on her carefully spun web. But that was her final gift to France. A broken mirror of monarchy, a warning etched into the throne itself. This is what happens when you forget who's really in control. Strategic breakdown. Immortality through fear and influence. Catherine's death marked the end of a dynasty, but not of her power. Because true power, the kind she mastered, doesn't live in bloodlines. It lives in ideas. Here's how she ensured her legacy would echo beyond death. Symbolic myth-making. Catherine knew perception was more durable than policy. By cultivating the image of the Black Queen, she planted herself into French cultural memory as something larger than life, a haunting archetype. Fear as memory. She weaponized the unknown. Poison. Occult. Betrayal. Her name was never spoken without suspicion. That fear made her unforgettable. Contagious control. Her strategies were adopted, mimicked, evolved. Future monarchs, politicians, and corporate titans borrowed her playbook. She became a quiet architect of modern psychological warfare. She mastered the invisible. She turned motherhood into monarchy. And in doing so, she became what few ever achieve. A sovereign of shadows.